Good morning. This is Kelvin Simmons, a retired probation and parole officer and retired adjunct college professor of criminology with a focus on criminal justice and law enforcement. The title today is How Aggressive Behavior and Mens Rea Affect Criminal Offending. Now, I will make this note. This will be short because what I learned is normally when I prepare a topic, it was for a college class. And that class may be a 4-hour evening class. So it's extremely difficult for me to be what they call it, short-winded. But let me give you a short definition of mens rea. And that's because many people probably has no encounters or had no encounters with mens rea. It's Latin for having a guilty mind, intent to commit, recklessness or negligence, knowledge that you're doing an act that's against the law. Example, an accountant who embezzles. That accountant has the mens rea because they're thinking about what they're going to do with that money, and they're thinking about taking it, and then they take it. So they had the intent, they had the knowledge that it was wrongdoing. And of course, they weren't being reckless or negligent, but mens rea includes recklessness or negligence. In other words, you can cause someone's death without the intent, so you end up with a different charge other than first-degree murder. So that's conviction for a felony. When you think about mens rea, the prosecutor needs to show that you had the guilty mind or the intent to commit that offense, and then they have to prove that what you did was a act that was against the state or against the state laws. So, aggressive behavior. That's an interesting one. You disrespect other people. In other words, you disrespect their right to be left alone by you. In other words, they don't want to be bothered with you, but you're going to push yourself on them. You desire to control that person or another person. Part of that is you might be one of those who are easy to anger. In other words, you might have what they call that thing, an anger management problem, where when you try to impose your will on someone else and they resist, now you're ready to physically attempt control. In other words, you're going to do something to their body that they don't want done. You have a problem controlling you. If you have a problem controlling you, then you are probably going to end up criminally offending. At the least, you're going to get yourself some battery charges. And we're not talking about car batteries. We're talking about battery as when you place your hands or your feet on somebody else's body. So you have a problem controlling yourself. That's part of that anger management. That's part of that aggressive behavior. And then you put in mens rea. Were you reckless, or did you intend to do those things? What I've learned over the years is if a person has an anger management problem and you resist their proposition or whatever it is they're trying to do to you, then they're going to end up developing the mens rea, that they're going to force you to do what they want you to do, even if it means they have to give you a beat down. So that person mentally decides to violate someone else's space without regard to the consequences or the results to that person that they are using their aggressive behavior towards. So I have a little note here, mens rea, you harbor malice and forethought prior to and during the commission of your criminal act. You know it is morally or legally wrong, but your aggressive self, that's you, overrides your inhibitions. The interesting thing there is that sometimes that inhibition You may have inhibitions against doing certain things. You may have inhibitions that keep you from committing certain acts that are unacceptable behavior. But when you take a drink of the MD-40, the vodka, sometimes it's just the wine. In other words, when you encounter the alcohol, introduce it into your body, the alcohol tends to lower your inhibitions and increase the possibility or probability that your aggressive behavior will cause you to move over to that mens rea, where now you're willing to do something, and you thought about it, and you gave it a little thought, maybe a little bit, but your inhibition didn't keep you from doing it, and you struck me upside the head. And now you have displayed aggressive behavior, and at the same time displaying your malice and your forethought. Because if I wasn't what you were, or the object of your aggression, you might have punched the wall. But I must have been the object of your aggression because you punched me. And that's that short video. I just wanted to do a short one. I wanted to cover aggressive behavior in mens rea, because that aggressive behavior is what causes many people to end up on probation and or end up on parole after a prison sentence, because they fail to control themselves. The first thing for controlling themselves is to understand themselves. If they know they have an aggressive disposition and anger management problem, then they need to learn to walk away. Thank you for listening and indulging me in this video, and I request that you give me a like and a share and subscribe. In other words, help motivate me to continue to do the videos. Thank you.